What I'm presenting today is an article I published 2 years ago, but then I will start with a story even many more years ago to tell you why I started that and what I found in that research in this presentation. But before I start, I like to acknowledge, in a much more broader sense than what Roy Rhodes usually to do, to our lands, a plural form, to our peoples, also a plural form, and to our stories. You will hear many stories from me today. That's also a plural form, and to our many ways of communication. And I'm really thankful to these, because without our lands, people, stories, and many ways, you won't actually see and hear about my research, because my research is all about many ways of communication and a misled conceptualization as a case I'm going to present to you. Non-Assertiveness was the title when I contribute to a publication published 2 years ago in UK, when they call up for article like chapters idea. They said, let's think about, if there's anything ancient but still be useful for today's management. And I was thinking, well, I have a story to share, and I like to share with a broader audience. That's why I submitted my chapter. And then it's published in that book with the same title as today's presentation. And if you are interested, I have the PDF for you to read. And usually you will find that reading a PDF is better to listen to the author and listen to what's the background of that. And if you are interested in the references, I also can email you that one. But one reference I will highlight here is Deborah Lyhan's desoxide dissertation. That's very much related to this chapter. I would soon tell you about that. So, so this is not only kind of inspired in my research at Roy Rhodes. This is inspired by one of my friends who was my classmate in the high school when we studied in China together. And then he also immigrated to Canada and become a professor. And so we are teaching in 2 universities. I'm on the most west shore, like university, and he's on the most east one. So it's Memorial in Newfoundland. And I'm teaching in social science, and he's very much a scientist, so he's teaching physics. And we share a lot of in common, same age, same sex, and the same last name, Li. And don't worry, there are over 10 million Lis in China, so it's never a shortage of that last name. But then I think approximately about 10 years ago, that he was at the bottleneck in his professional career advancement. That he thought that he already deserved a promotion, but then nobody's asking about that. And then we occasionally communicate, and then he's kind of sharing that concern with me. And that time I was teaching communication, and very commonly, when you teach communication, public speech, skills or these things, we have the concept of assertiveness, right? And I said, you shall be more assertive. You shall tell your boss that you deserve a promotion, and you like to have a rank higher, and you like to convert to permanent, all these things. So, I don't know how if he followed my advice or not, but fast forward to today, he's the engineering department director, and he's a full professor, and also he has been receiving a lot of research funding from the Canadian Tri-Council. But that was the first seed in my mind that, am I teaching the right thing about communication? Are there different ways of communication? That was the first one. And then Deborah Lyhan came to study in the desoxy program, and Matt Haynes and I co-supervised her dissertation. And she was asking in her dissertation that why so many competent Chinese Canadian middle managers in the bank she worked are not seeking advancement, although they are qualified. And also she's asking why the executive board doesn't really have a diverse composition, and why these people are quiet. And so I sent her a lot of books to read, like Confucius teaching, like to, all the Chinese are educated to be humble, modest, not to boast, like not to say. And then I think, well, this is something again related to assertiveness, like is there something similar, and what's going on? So then I dig into communication theories, as we often do. And I remember Edward Hall, as the pioneer in intercultural studies, proposed that we have at least two ways. I say at least, we actually have more, but Edward Hall said, we have at least two ways to compose a message. Whether we invest a lot of time, a lot of energy to have the content coded and then transferred to the receiver, or we basically embed everything into the context and wish the receivers will receive that properly. And that's the model we often use in communication studies, which is called high context, low context. But don't worry about that. You don't have homework or assignment or examination, and you don't have to remember that. But you can see it, that when people are from the same culture, they're all smiling when they receive the message. For example, if we have this guy like high context, because they invest like 80%, basically like 80% sugar and 20% coffee. And of course it's sweet, but this guy also prefers a sweet message. And so this is well received. But then there are other people will invest less in the context, but they will code their messages more in the content. And both of these people, I put them, like I put different hats above them here to indicate that they are from different cultures, and they are happy. And I took random videos and pictures at Royal Roads to illustrate what is a low context and high content message. So here is in front of the security where you actually see a sign very big, this way out, which basically I think echoes the same message as exit. And this is a typical low context because what? When you erase all the other things, you still can see the message. And the message is 100% clear that this is the way out and this is the exit. And it's not depends on whether today's rainy or sunny or the context, like doesn't really matter. And this is the message, and it is so sender-oriented. I said, the sender feel they are responsible to make the message clear and clearer and the clearest. Like the sender feel like if you still don't know which way is out, I feel guilty. So that's why the sender think, okay, this sign is not enough, and let's put another one. And maybe one day, with Pedro's approval, there will be another sign.
Next week.
Next week. So that everyone knows that this is the way out. So the sender think, okay, what I'm doing is I'm guessing if someone will look up or look in front, and I want to make sure I am responsible. And this is the video when I took, I walked down the hill, and it's another example of a very low context and a very high content. Let's watch it. Don't worry about the quality and the sound. Don't worry about that. We have the EV charging sign newly added, and then let's walk downhill, and this is probably the way you pass down frequently on campus. And so I apologize for the low quality, but look at this, 20 kilometer, and here we have another bump and a 20 kilometer, and I counted, they are four, they are like pairs, and within 20 meters, it's kind of because the sender feel this is my responsibility to make sure you can see it. But then you go to other cultures. They are cultures, they only will put one sign because the sender think that's enough. If you don't see it, you bump, right? Or you get a ticket. But there are other cultures, there's no sign. Because those cultures are so-called high context, they expect the receiver is responsible. Like, you observe, and this is my message. I already said it. You didn't get it? That's your responsibility. And so then I was thinking, okay, how we can get people frustrated is to send a message across it. Like it's kind of, okay, I send a high context one to a high content one. Then the high content one say, I didn't see it. Like it's only 20% coffee. Like send me more coffee. I don't need so much sugar. And he said, in the sugar, you actually see the message. Like my message is all covered by sugar. So then I think, okay, what kind of research method should I do in this one? And I for those who familiar with my recent study on the end-of-life care handbook project, I start to give up interviewing people because they are entertaining me. Like they know that I'm a researcher and I'm looking for something, and they try to satisfy me so that they can get rid of me faster, right? Because I did I supervised one research previously. We went to downtown Victoria, the nursing home, and we want to interview the family members about what do they think about the caregiving, all these things. And then after that project, I was very much happy with the thesis my student wrote. But then after that project, my father got dementia, and he was sent to nursing home. And then I walked with my father in the nursing home one day when university student came and asked, may I ask you some questions? I was kind of shouting internally, like say, go away. I want to spend all available time with my father, right? And I don't want to answer any question. So that was the moment I was thinking, well, interviewing, of course, it's a great technique like to collect the data, but then how to validate that's the real. But then I was thinking, okay, there are many, many other ways, and I started to be very much interested and keen on the discourse management theory, which says that which discourse lasts longer means a lot. And think about that. Our society has been changed a lot. Technology, yeah, well, think about, 2,000 years ago, there's no PowerPoint, and 2,000 years later, there won't be PowerPoint, right? Technology changed, our schooling system changed, this changed, that changed. What didn't change is our stories survived. Like, diagonal, they didn't survive, but they are still stories survived. Strange. Like this story I'm going to tell you survived. That when I say it to the people from this culture, they will remember that. And they will say, oh yeah, I know this story. But then these people passed away, the storyteller passed away, and this story, like, it's kind of what's going on, like why those stories are still surviving. And it tells us that the fundamental value embedded in those stories is still embraced by those people. Because otherwise the story will went to museum. And we have to write a lot of footnotes. But this kind of story you don't need to, and you don't need high educated people to be aware of it. Like you check with my grandma, you check with my mom, like, they all know that. You check with any people from that culture, they know that. And I'm very much interested in this way, and this is what I'm doing more and more. It's like I only want to catch, like the signage, like it's kind of, it's there. Like, you don't need to interview the security. It's there telling you something, right? It's doubled, tripled, whatever, it's there. So I start to take pictures, and I start to double check with the students, like, do you know this story? Yes, that's all. You don't need to tell me more, because it survived in your culture. And this is one of the survived story. Here's the, maybe I have a pointer here. Yes, this is the emperor, and this is not the emperor, but this is the person who wants to be the emperor. And his name is Sima Zhao, for many of you are familiar with the story. And this Sima Zhao wants to be an emperor. He didn't say anything. He just wear a sword, which is not allowed in the palace. And he's just standing there, which is not allowed as a staff. You have to be here. And he's just standing there. And he's just not proclaiming, like, I want to be the emperor. However, all the people from the same culture understand, like, you want to be the emperor. And he's doing an extreme low content, like he's not saying anything, right? And extremely high use the environment to proclaim his ambition. And then those people all received, and they say, yeah, we see it. And this is probably my high school classmate did. It's kind of, he's publishing a lot, he's excellent in teaching, and he thought, like, my boss will see it. I want to get a promotion, but not really. And this is also very much similar, like what Deborah found in her research, is that many Chinese Canadians thought, I expressed it. I already told you, not verbally, I already told you, you can see it. I worked hard and I make this bank branch, doing well, and you already can see it, right? And so that this is like very much culturally, how much you convert the message into a verbal signal, like, hey, I want to be emperor. So this helps me also, like when I was watching, the Game of the Thrones, to see how the emperors or empress want to be, or the kings want to be, like to proclaim. And do they need a speech? Or do they just as mute as this guy? It's kind of, I'm standing there with a sword. That's all you need to know. And that's a clear message. All of these people understand who's really in power. Right? And so these are the stories that I'm more and more fascinated. And then I was thinking, okay, what if this Sima Zhao, you saw him standing there, like travel to a different culture. The subjects doesn't know. Like, what do you mean? Like, we didn't see that. It's the same thing. Like, if a person from this kind of culture, like say, I'm not saying it, but you need to see it. The receivers from another culture is like, you have to say it, otherwise I won't know it. Then it's kind of a complete mismatch. And then, and then you, like when I took my students, Royal Road students to China, one of the students mentioned to me, like, where's the airport? I said, well, airport's like, it's kind of far away. But then he said, in Victoria, in Vancouver, 40 kilometers before the airport, you see the sign pointing like this way to the airport. And I just think, that reminded me again, it's like the sender's responsibility. I'm going to tell you where's the airport. And then you drove to Victoria Airport, you start to see they draw the airplane on the ground, right? Like, as if, like, you already can hear the noise and you already can see it. But then it's painted, right? Airport, and it's repeating again and again. But in other cultures, they think this is a redundancy. You don't need to say. You want to be the emperor? We all know that, right? And you want a promotion? We all know that. If you say too much, you're not modest, right? And so then I think, okay, let me dig out more stories. This is another story where Zhuge Liang, supposed to be the most wise person in the Chinese culture. He was kind of a hermit, and he's kind of living in this kind of countryside. And the emperor-to-be heard about his name, visited him for 3 times. The first 2 times he wasn't there. And then the 3rd time, he was kind of taking an afternoon nap. And then the general and the emperor like waited. And they didn't say anything except this guy. This guy said, okay, let's burn the house and he will come out, right? But the emperor said, just wait quietly. And so, and there's no verbal exchange. But once after the nap and after knowing that they visited for 3 times, he accepted to be the prime minister for the new kingdom. Like he came out. And there's no appointment letter, there's no contract negotiation, like what's my salary or these things. But this is like enough expression of sincerity to recruit him into the new kingdom. And this guy's even weirder. He's also a prime minister, but 2,000 years ago, more than 2,000 years, 2,500 years. So this guy, he was fishing near a river when he's 80 years old, and his wife thought like this husband will never kind of do anything, achieve anything, because he has been fishing there all the time without anything below. Like there's no bait, there's no fish line. And he's doing this for 80 years until the emperor found him and say, come with me. And then he becomes one of the most well-known prime minister. And he's not sending his resume. He's not not doing any promotional, procedure like filling the tables or the forms and all these things. He's just quietly, passively expressing and his wish to be advanced, and it's heard. Although there's no verbal things, it's heard, and this is today, according to the legend, he was fishing there, right? And they build this up, and this is like the Little Mermaid thing, like touristy. But then, why after 2,500 years later, this story still survived and still become a tourist attraction? This tells us that his way of expressing still survived. Like, you don't say it, your leader will find it. You don't say it, and I think my classmates used this exact the same way. It's kind of fishing without a pole, and it's kind of waiting. Then I think, okay, there are more stories like this. This is in Chinese is 桃李不言，下自成蹊, which is like, if you are a fruit tree, if you bear great fruit, don't worry, you don't need to say anything. People will come. It's like if you are someone, your boss or your leader will know. So you don't need to express anything, and this is a very much Taoist idea, Then I think, okay, are there exceptionals? And there was one. There was one. You can see from the figure that, of course, this is the boss, and these are the subordinates. And someone stood up, and his name was Mao Sui. And then he said, I do the job. And I was thinking, well, this is also 2,500 years old story and survived. And I was thinking, well, this is contradictory, right? They are from the same culture, and this story just ruined my paper. Because they are people very much assertive and say, I do the job. I have this idea, what? So then I studied his story. First of all, this governor has a mission. He needs to select 20 subjects to go with him for that one. And he already has 19. And he missed one. And he's kind of, who will go with me? And so that's one thing. Second, this guy has been working for him for 3 years with no promotion. And he thought like, okay, I need a promotion. And so he joined the crew bravely, and he helped his boss to achieve the mission. So that's wonderful, right? To achieve the mission. However, the survive the story only tells us half of it. There's another half is about his afterlife of that one. Like, he recommended himself assertively, and he got hired to join the mission, and then he achieved that. And then I turned to like those old historical book, and I found he's not promoted afterwards. He continued to be a common subordinate. Because what? Because he is a not preferred model. He is not a preferred model in this culture. Although, accidentally, yeah, his kind of assertiveness was kind of recorded but not appreciated. And accidentally he joined the crew, but he's not promoted afterwards. And think about the other stories. This guy, 80 years old, immediately promoted as prime minister. And this guy living in a countryside immediately promoted it. So it's kind of different treatment. And I would say in each of the cultures we will study, they are always contradictory stories. But then you have to see what's the mainstream and what's the branch. And what's this kind of stand-alone. And the stand-alone story also means a lot, because the stand-alone story tells us there's a wish, there's a hope, like, let's do this. But then that's the only story. right? And we also want to do this. So I told many students from China, they can do similar research like what I do, is like they can, because they are more contemporary, right? They can compare, contemporary TV plays. Because TV show, it has to be sold. Because if they make a story they cannot sell, that won't work. And then you say, you watch those, and see in those shows who's the hero and why that person becomes a hero and what's supporting there and what kind of Asian stories they are quoting as a background. What I'm proposing here is that instead of there are two ways of communication, what we call low context or high context, like Edward Hall suggested. They are actually more dynamics. What if a culture will just kind of inject a touch here and then disappear from this, how should I say, surface, right? And what if there are other cultures doing this? And what if there are cultures doing beyond of it in different ways? We didn't hear it. We didn't hear it, and then we will miss it. We'll miss it, and so that's why I will do my acknowledgements again. Is that we are from many lands, not only one land, and we are peoples, right? Not one person. And also we all remember and retell our stories, not only one story. And then we are demonstrating different ways of communication. And so as I'm going to conclude here, it's like, well, I chatted with my friend, another Professor Li, that very often in our universities, well, you just returned, as a threat, and but I dare to say it. Don't fire me. In a university, in many public institutions, we have on one side embrace diversity policies, blah blah, all these things. But then on the other side, for example, human resources. For example, the way that for our faculty and for our staff to get promotion, all these things, is not matching. It is not matching. So embracing diversity doesn't mean, okay, today in our room we have how many people from how many different nationalities or how many languages we speak. But we need an audit on what we are saying and what we are doing, right? And is that enough, dangerous enough? But, say if we have a faculty like my friend, Professor Li, is expressing in a very different way that he's qualified for promotion, do we have this kind of process? Say, yeah, we saw it, right? Or do we still require them to do the so-called assertiveness? And then I also, in my paper, I have more discussion on this kind of non thing, the non-nonsense thing. What do you mean non-assertiveness? Sorry for that. It's colonialism, as we are calling, the decolonization. It's colonialism. It's like, it's like this is assertiveness, and this is the only way, and this is the best way. And if you are not doing this, we don't hear you, we don't understand you. And as we also have indigenization in our research teaching agenda, then there are many indigenous ways, like cannot be accommodated in this simple model. So I remember the first time in MAIIC we had Sandra, a student. She asked me if she can dance her thesis out. I said, do it, because she's a dancer. And I'm not a dancer, and I'm very poor understanding what's dancing. But then I said, if this is your language, this is your way, do it. So her sister videotaped her thesis, and it's still in our library, a DVD. And when I mention DVD, you know how ancient it is. But then she danced her thesis out. I think, the way we are teaching and the way we are doing research, which embrace more diversity, is like, indigenization. There could be a lot of indigenous ways of expressing that we are blind to and we are deaf to. Like, we didn't see it. You have to say it. What if they want to dance it? Right? What if they want to sing it? What if they don't want to sing it? And if you don't sing it, we still cannot embrace it. No, not like that. And so non-assertiveness is like, it's kind of, here we have assertiveness and everything else is non. That's not true. And then we have non-Western. And think about, East and South and the North, like they're all non-Western, right? And it's kind of, we are different. All the non-Western say, I'm not a non-Western, I'm Japanese. But you are non-Western, right? Anything I don't understand, you are non-something, right? It beyond my knowledge, and I'm not interested. And so that's something like I was thinking, like really, I hope my paper can inspire people. It's like, this is nonsense when we are using the non thing. And that's why I call it a misleading concept. Like as if today's world is still black and white. Assertiveness and non-assertiveness. The non one actually is much bigger and much more complicated. And even when you know the complication, it helps you to understand actually what is assertiveness, right? And so back to my original story, I told, my high school classmate is like, don't bother. Assertiveness is only 1%, and there are 99% beyond that little universe. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you.